Trasker 9 buzzed with the clamor of hundreds of species, their voices rising into the steel rafters of the auction dome. Neon signs pulsed over stalls piled high with rare alloys, forbidden tech, and creatures from uncharted systems. The auctioneer, a thick-shelled Volnari, stood at the center podium, for eyes scanning the gathered crowd. "Next item," he rasped, voice echoing through the amplifiers. "Genetically unstable specimen. Bioorganic prototype. Unstable temperament. No warranties, no returns." Two armored guards dragged out a small, bone-thin creature inside a transparent stasis cube. The crowd hushed. The creature was barely the size of a backpack. Its fur was pale, patchy in places, a raw white sheen like exposed bone. One eye glowed a soft silver. The other was scarred shut. It huddled into itself, thin limbs trembling. A few aliens chuckled. Others jeered. "What is that thing? Looks sick. Throw it in the recycler." The Volmari slapped a tendril against the podium. "Albino lupinid class quadruped. Failed hybrid. Abandoned biotech trial. Minimum bid starts at 1 unit of raw ferium." Even that earned no takers. In the rear of the crowd, a tall human leaned against a half-disassembled engine coil. Jace Morgan, grease-streaked and half-awake, had been bartering for replacement coolant injectors. He hadn't planned on paying attention to the auction. But a soft sound pricked his ear. A whimper. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a faint, hopeless squeak. He turned. The thing in the cube flinched as another alien tapped the glass. But its visible eye, clouded but aware, stared outward, not with fear, but with a strange sort of endurance. As if it had already accepted whatever came next. Jace straightened. "What did they say it was?" "Biotrash," grunted a spindly-necked trader beside him. "Some failed Zelver experiment. Probably bred for combat but got the wrong instincts. They say it refused orders. Hugged one of its handlers." Jace squinted. "Hugged? Yeah. Like a child or something. Real defective stuff." He stepped forward. The crowd parted slightly, amused. "You bidding human?" the auctioneer croaked. "We throw in a decomposer tank. You'll need it within a week." Jace scanned the cube. The creature looked up at him. No fear. Just waiting. Quietly. Willing. "How much for it?" A few snorts rang out. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. 1 unit ferium. "Honestly, give me 5 credits and I'll call it even." "Done," Jace said. He transferred the credits. The stasis cube hissed open. The creature didn't move. "Come on," Jace muttered gently, kneeling. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The wolf thing hesitated, paused, twitching. Slowly, stiffly, it stepped out. Its gait was clumsy, like it wasn't used to walking free. Jace reached out, and it flinched but didn't run. "What do I call you?" he murmured. The creature blinked. "You look like a snowball rolled through engine grease." A soft chuff escaped the small muzzle. "All right then. Snowball it is." He picked it up. Light as a toolkit. The fur was matted, but the body was warm. Too warm. Feverish. As he walked back to the hangar, aliens stared. Some laughed. One offered to buy the creature for scrap value. He ignored them. Back aboard his hauler, he set Snowball down beside the heating vent. The creature curled tight, not asleep, just waiting to see if this place was any different. Jace brought water. Rations. A thermal blanket. He didn't speak much, just moved slowly. Snowball didn't eat at first. But when Jace turned to work on the cooling array, he heard the soft crunch of dry feed being chewed. He said nothing. Just smiled to himself. For the next hour, Snowball stayed close to the heater, occasionally glancing over as Jace worked. Eventually, the little creature stood, stumbled over, and placed a paw on a wrench. Then looked at Jace. "What, you wanna help?" The paw nudged the wrench closer. Jace chuckled. "You're weird." "I like weird." By night cycle, Snowball had found a corner behind the main console. Not hiding, resting. Watching. Jace left a low light on. In the silence of the ship, surrounded by humming wires and the soft clicks of the reactor, the human stared at the small, discarded life he had bought for 5 credits. He wasn't sure why he'd done it. But he knew, deep in his gut, that something about this creature mattered. Something every other species had overlooked. The laughter hadn't stopped since Jace left the auction floor. Word traveled fast on Trasker 9, and a human spending hard-earned credits on what everyone else called a genetic failure was ripe material for mockery. Even the local vendors joined in, offering collector's feed for feral fluff balls, or sarcastic pet collars labeled prototype. Jace didn't respond. He focused on repairing the hydraulic lines in the rear thruster while Snowball lay on a folded blanket nearby, eyes tracking every movement. It hadn't growled or barked once. It moved only when necessary, like it was trying not to take up space. It still hadn't wagged its tail. By the 3rd day, the creature began following Jace around the ship. Quietly. Always a few steps behind. It flinched at sudden noises, ducked at clattering tools, but never ran. And every time Jace offered food or water, Snowball took it gently, without desperation. More like it was trying to prove it could behave. He didn't treat it like a broken experiment. He didn't try to train it. He just let it exist. One morning, as Jace pried open a burnt power junction, a soft tap against his foot made him glance down. Snowball had dragged over a screwdriver in its mouth. It wasn't the right tool. But it was close. "You learning?" Jace asked, taking it. "You watching me?" The creature blinked once. He started talking to it more. Not because he expected answers, but because it felt natural. Long hours in a holler got lonely. Snowball didn't interrupt, didn't bark, didn't demand attention. It just listened. That was enough. He patched the fusion coils, cleaned the thruster intake, recalibrated the sensor arrays. Always with Snowball nearby. After a week, it began to anticipate him. It would bring the right tool. Sit in the right spot. Avoid cables. It even nudged a diagnostic panel closed with its nose before Jace could reach it. He wasn't sure when the change happened. But one night, after a particularly long day of engine work, he set his mug down beside the console and felt warmth against his boot. Snowball had curled up beside him, not on the blanket, but pressed close. Tentative. Testing boundaries. Jace didn't move. He stared at the creature. It still looked rough. Fur still thin. Scars still raw. But its breathing had steadied. Its body no longer shook. Its eyes, those mismatched eyes, now watched him without fear. He leaned back. "You're not just some lab error." Snowball shifted slightly, one ear twitching. "Whatever they made you for, they gave up too soon." The creature chuffed once, soft and low. Then rested its head on his foot. It wasn't love yet. Not trust. But it was something. The next day, one of his shipmates, a Rutari named Kless, came aboard to check inventory. The moment he saw Snowball, his spines flared. "You're still keeping that thing? You know what the Zelver said it was, right? Maladaptive AI symbiont crossbreed. It's corrupted. No override chip. It could snap." Jace didn't look up. "It hasn't. Yet." Kless circled the creature. Snowball stood, tail low but steady, and placed itself slightly between Kless and Jace. "That's not a guard stance," Kless said. "It's mimicking you. I've seen pets like this before. They imprint." Jace wiped his hands on a cloth. "It's not a pet. Then what is it?" "I don't know yet." Kless shook his head. "You humans and your strays. Don't come crying when it tears into your wiring mid-jump." After the alien left, Jace sat beside the creature and stared at the blank wall across the deck. "Don't worry about him." Snowball didn't move. But it leaned slightly into his side. It was the first time it had done that on its own. He began modifying the systems to accommodate the creature. A padded corner in the NAV deck. A feeding dispenser connected to the water unit. He didn't need to. But every small thing he added earned him a look from Snowball that he couldn't describe, like the creature wasn't used to being considered in someone's plans. One night, the emergency lights flickered due to a faulty capacitor. Jace hadn't fixed it yet. Snowball, startled by the sudden darkness, let out a sharp cry. Not a howl. Not fear. Something else, like a child calling out instinctively. Jace returned to the console and activated the backup lights manually. When he turned, Snowball was pressed into the corner, breathing hard, fur bristled. Jace knelt slowly and held out a hand. It's okay. I've got you. The creature stared at him, wide-eyed. Then, shakily, it stepped forward and placed its head under his palm. For the first time, Jace felt its muscles relax. Completely. As if it had finally stopped expecting pain. That night, as he fell asleep beside the console, Snowball rested against his side. Breathing matched. Movements calm. Neither of them needed words. They just understood. Snowball's behavior began shifting in small, unsettling ways. At first, it was subtle. Tools appeared next to Jace before he reached for them. Diagnostic interfaces flickered to life when the creature walked by. One morning, a locked panel opened without command after Snowball brushed against it. Jace noticed but said nothing. He logged it all in a private file, unsure if it was luck, learned behavior, or something more. The tipping point came when the navigation systems failed mid-transit. The ship spiraled slightly off course, a minor drift, but the recalibration failed. Jace ran multiple checks. Nothing worked. He stepped away to fetch his toolkit, muttering. Behind him, Snowball padded forward, paused beside the control panel, and stared. The screens rebooted. No sound. No sparks. Just a smooth restart, as if the system recognized something external and responded. Jace froze. He turned slowly. Snowball was sitting calmly, eyes fixed on him. How did you do that? No answer. Just the soft thud of its tail against the floor, once. He ran a full bioscan that night. Not a standard one. He bypassed ship protocols, hooked a neural interface directly into a black market diagnostic reader, and ran a deep genetic and cybernetic profile. The results staggered him. Snowball wasn't just organic. Beneath the fur and skin, laced through the neural network, were microfilaments of bioadaptive circuitry. Wetware. Living tech. It had been grown, not just bred. Half its DNA matched known canine strains. The rest was a mess of hybridized sequences, some unregistered, some military grade. Tethered to all of it was a dormant neural substrate resembling an AI processor. Experimental. Possibly illegal. A weapon. Or a prototype for one. The final tag in the genetic metadata confirmed it: Zelver Syndicate. Experimental Asset X197, Emotional Deviation Failure. Snowball had been designed to integrate with systems, to enhance command networks, perhaps control them. But it had rejected its purpose. Its emotional core, likely a side effect of the organic DNA, had overpowered the programming. They couldn't reprogram it, so they disposed of it. Jace sat for hours, the data looping on screen. Snowball curled near the power vent, unaware or unconcerned. Or maybe it knew. Maybe it remembered. He couldn't tell. But he understood now why the auction had been so desperate to offload it. It wasn't just a failed pet. It was a discarded asset. One with capabilities far beyond what he'd imagined. He encrypted the files and deleted the local logs. If the syndicate knew he'd uncovered the truth, they'd come. He kept quiet. But the damage had already begun. A day later, at a remote fueling station, 3 unknown ships docked next to his. 2 Zelver. 1 unmarked. The crew didn't announce themselves, didn't trade, didn't speak. They just watched. Jace kept his head down. Finished refueling. But the tension spiked when he returned to his hauler and found the ramp unsecured. Inside, nothing was missing, except Snowball, who was nowhere in sight. He activated internal tracking. A pulsing blue dot blinked outside the ship perimeter. He ran. He found Snowball surrounded by 3 armed figures. The creature wasn't fighting. It sat calmly, but its eyes tracked every motion, tail low. One figure reached out with a restraint module. Jace didn't hesitate. He pulled his sidearm and shouted. The mercenaries raised theirs, but before anyone fired, the lights exploded overhead. The ground trembled. Snowball stood. The nearest merc dropped his weapon, clutching his head. The second collapsed, bleeding from the nose. The third tried to run. Snowball surged forward, not with fangs or claws, but with a pulse of raw electromagnetic energy. The ship's systems flared. Comms overloaded. Nearby drones dropped dead from the air. The attacker fell. Jace stood frozen, gun still raised. Snowball looked at him, chest heaving. You did that? Snowball took a shaky step forward. Not proud. Not angry. Almost ashamed. Jace holstered his weapon. He knelt, placing a hand on the creature's head. I don't care what they made you to be. You're not theirs anymore. Snowball leaned into the touch. Later, in the safety of the ship, Jace finally spoke aloud what he'd only suspected. They'll come back. Not for me, for you. Snowball sat at his feet, silent. You're not a mistake. You're proof they failed. And that makes you dangerous. The creature didn't move. You saved me back there. You didn't have to. A soft sound escaped its throat. Not a growl. Not a bark. Something like a low chime, resonant and artificial, part machine, part breath. It was trying to speak. Trying to mimic language. Jace exhaled. We need to leave the main routes. They'll track us otherwise. Snowball stood. Together, they began prepping for departure. No commands. No leash. No programming. Just choice. They left Trasker 9 before sunrise, pushing the thrusters to capacity. Jace rerouted their transponder ID, disabled long-range comms, and shut off all ship-to-ship navigation beacons. They slipped into dead space, far from any registered trade route. Snowball watched silently from the co-pilot's seat, body still but alert, gaze locked on the stars beyond the viewport. The next system was uninhabited. An asteroid field shielded them from most scans, and Jace initiated a stealth drift, engines offline, minimal emissions. They floated in the dark for 3 days. No lights. No noise. Only recycled air and the low hum of internal power. During that time, Snowball didn't rest. It patrolled the corridors at regular intervals, pausing at access panels and communication relays. It ran checks without being asked. It stayed away from the console only when Jace manually locked it out. Whatever instincts had once been programmed into it weren't gone, they were just buried beneath something stronger. Awareness. Independent thought. On the second night, Jace tried to sleep. He couldn't. The weight of the data he'd uncovered, the way Snowball had reacted in that ambush, it all spiraled in his mind. He rose from the cot and sat at the central terminal. The security logs had autosynced during the last port stop. He replayed the footage from the attack. What disturbed him wasn't the takedown. It was the precision. Snowball hadn't acted out of panic. Every movement had been calculated, disabling weapons first, neutralizing non-lethally, controlling electrical output down to the millisecond. That kind of control wasn't instinct. It was tactical design. But none of it matched what he saw in Snowball day to day. There was no aggression in the way it brought him tools, or the way it waited beside him during meals, or how it placed its head near his hand each time he sat. This wasn't a machine. It was something caught between function and feeling. The following day, while rerouting shield wiring, Jace turned and found Snowball holding a datapad in its mouth. Not dropped. Not chewed. Held carefully, like it knew the importance. He took it, opened the file, and stared. A diagram. Star maps with plotted paths. One route highlighted in red, a syndicate supply chain hub operating under a shell company. A footnote had been appended in standard trade glyphs. Asterisk known Zelver relay point. High traffic. Weak encryption, asterisk. Jace looked down. You found this? Snowball didn't blink. You want to go there? A short nod. He stared at the datapad again. This wasn't just memory. This was intention. You're planning something. The creature stepped back, then looked at the NAV console. Jace knew the risk. If they approached a syndicate relay, they'd be tagged immediately. But something in Snowball's gaze demanded trust. Not loyalty, understanding. A silent plea to finish something left undone. He aligned the coordinates manually. No auto-jump. No distress beacon. A direct approach on a black vector curve. They jumped. The syndicate hub looked like any other. Industrial outer plating. Freighter docks. Cargo lifts. Hidden turrets embedded in asteroid flanks. But Snowball wasn't watching the structure. It moved to the communications array, tail still, body low. It placed a paw against the sensor controls and closed its eye. Jace backed away. The screen lit up with raw code. No keyboard. No terminal. Just data cascading, unlocking hidden frequencies, tapping secure archives. Snowball's breathing slowed, muscles rigid, as if channeling everything through that single point of contact. A moment later, the system froze. A burst of static erupted. Then silence. Did you shut it down? No response. Snowball, what did you do? The creature turned slowly, visibly drained. Behind it, the console continued scrolling. Names. Serial codes. Biological blueprints. Shipment logs. Experimental failures. Snowball had exposed everything. The files uploaded to dormant satellinks in orbit. Then those links broke protocol and pinged open channels, bouncing through independent data loops, scattering evidence across dozens of unregulated networks. The syndicate wouldn't be able to bury it. Jace stared at the screen. You weren't trying to run. You were finishing what they started. Snowball stepped back toward him. It stumbled once, knees shaking. Jace caught it before it collapsed. You burned them from the inside. The creature's heartbeat pounded through its skin. Overexerted. Not designed to handle full data transfer alone. But it had done it anyway. Jace carried it to the med bay, bypassed the default scanner, and hooked it into a regenerative support cradle. As the interface calibrated, he saw it, neural strain in the artificial substrate. Damage from repeated system overrides. Permanent in places. Temporary in others. Snowball had pushed itself too far to protect him. To expose them. And now, it might never recover fully. Snowball lay in the recovery cradle, limbs still, eyes closed. Jace watched the monitor cycling through readings, neural response, cardiac rhythm, energy retention in the synthetic lattice. The substrate damage hadn't worsened, but it hadn't healed either. Whatever Snowball had done at the syndicate relay had overloaded parts of its nervous system beyond repair. Its processors were scorched, some neural paths rerouted crudely, others dormant. Yet the organic brain showed signs of adaptive compensation. It was still fighting. Jace stayed at its side for hours. He reconfigured the support systems to ease strain. Adjusted protein infusers. Lowered ambient noise. Anything to keep it stable. He couldn't do much else. What Snowball needed, no black market tech or medpod could provide. It needed time. It needed purpose. News began to spread across the back channels. Encrypted forums lit up with leaks. Zelver experimentation logs. Names of captured species. Locations of failed test sites. Entire colonies scrubbed from official records were suddenly being talked about again. Someone was putting it all together. No one traced it to Jace. Not directly. But rumors of a ghost asset circulated, an experimental biotech hybrid that turned on its creators and vanished into uncharted space. He read them all in silence. They didn't know the truth. They thought it was vengeance. They didn't see the way Snowball trembled in sleep or flinched from sparks. This wasn't a weapon with a grudge. It was a life form that had made a choice. Jace could have walked away. Cut ties. Sold the ship, changed his ID, and disappeared. But he didn't. He moved deeper into fringe space. Quiet routes, old ports. Not hiding, searching. For what, he wasn't sure. A safe place. A way to help. Something he couldn't name. Weeks passed. Snowball stirred more often. Still weak, but aware. It responded to voice. Moved its head when Jace spoke. It no longer curled in on itself while resting. It began eating again. Slowly it returned, not as it was, but different. It didn't help with tools or reroute systems. Instead, it simply stayed close. Watched. Listened. The reactive spark had dimmed, but the presence remained. Then, one night, the proximity alarm chirped. A small shuttle approached, no comms, no registration. Jace readied defenses but held fire. The ship docked and released a sealed crate into the transfer bay. It left without a word. Inside the crate were supplies, advanced nutrient packs, encrypted chips, and a device Jace had never seen. A handwritten note, in rough trade glyphs, read, "For the one that chose." He examined the device. It wasn't Syndicate tech. It was older, Terran design, modified for biotech resonance. A restoration module, built to interface with hybrid constructs. Illegal, powerful, and extinct for decades. Jace didn't question how it found them. Someone out there had seen the truth in the data. He installed it into the cradle. It took hours, but Snowball responded. Its breathing evened. Heart rate stabilized. Neural activity spiked, not dangerously, but clearly. Sections of the synthetic matrix reignited. Coordination improved. Reflexes tested themselves again. And for the first time since the relay, Snowball stood fully upright, without shaking. Jace didn't speak. He didn't need to. Snowball walked to him slowly. It pressed its forehead into his chest and stayed there. This wasn't gratitude. It was connection. From that point forward, things changed. Jace began receiving anonymous signals, requests for help, coordinates to abandoned test labs, rumors of more discarded prototypes. Not just animals. Not just hybrids. Sentience caught between what they were built for and what they chose to be. He didn't ignore them. With Snowball beside him, he became something else, part mechanic, part rescuer, part witness to the fallout of unchecked ambition. They traveled world to world, not to destroy, but to undo what had been done. In one derelict station, they found a cryopod containing a quadruped drone with partial consciousness. In another, an avian construct fused with language cores. Snowball approached each with care. Not dominance. Not fear. Recognition. Each one had the same look, confusion at being treated like they mattered. And that became their purpose. The galaxy had written them off as failures. Jace knew better. He'd seen what happened when you didn't walk away. When you stayed, listened, and chose to believe something broken could still build. Not for war. Not for profit. For connection. For choice. And as they jumped into the stars once more, Snowball curled beside the console, head resting on Jace's boot, not out of submission, but trust. A quiet truth no one could erase.